In early 2016, Amec Foster Wheeler was tasked by ADECA's Office of Water Resources with conducting a training on FEMA's RiskMAP tools. The training consisted of overviews of both regulatory and non-regulatory RiskMAP products, as well as in-depth looks at changes since last FERM, flood depth and analysis grids, flood risk assessment data, and area of mitigation interest data sets. Each dataset training included a general overview and review of the dataset attributes, as well as a hands-on exercise. The following is part 2 of a 4-part training session.
In our second data set here, we're going to talk about the flood depth and analysis grids. This once again is kind of coming away from the in or out philosophy that Matt Mod had, and going into giving real analysis is not just am I in or out, but how bad you are if you are in. And here's an example here with the Coosa River here at the 1% flood interval. And the different grids we have for this, we're going to have the depth grids, and these are going to be mapped. These are done for new studies. So if they're existing old studies, we do not have depth grids for those. And these are done at recurrence intervals of 10%, so 10-year flood, 4%, 25-year flood, 2%, 50-year flood, 1%, or the 100-year flood, or the 0.2 or the 500-year flood. We have those at different intervals to know exactly at each recurrence interval how deep to expect the water to get in certain areas. And for these grids, initially when these were conceived, we were hoping to have, like LiDAR, smaller, better, great. The problem with that is getting 2 foot, if anybody who's dealt with LiDAR and having to easily bring it in and convey it and share it with others, is how difficult and how large the data sets get exponentially with the better resolution you get. Yes?
In regards to describing an annual chance of flood event, we were in a public involvement meeting, and a guy stepped up and he described a 2% or 0.2% or the 500-year flood as also correlating to a 2% chance over the life of a 25-year mortgage of flooding.
I'm glad you brought that up. I have a slide here at the end that will make some sense of that. But yeah, that is...
the first time I've heard that.
Yes, that's one of... doing this class before, that's probably a third of the class's favorite slide to go back and tell private citizens who do the old line of, well, 1% chance, what are the odds of it flooding? I'm just here for 30, they think. And we'll go over that slide exactly how mathematics comes into factor there. And once again, these grids were originally designed thinking about 2-foot cell size, but we realized that's just impossible with that kind of large data, and so we ended up doing a 10-foot cell size for these. So we had to sacrifice a little bit of accuracy for the sake of usability. And we have the percent annual chance, which will give you an actual thing. If somebody says you're in the 1% flood zone, for some reason in their head it clicks, so I have a 1% chance of flooding, when in fact that's not the truth at all. And we'll go through those grids as well. And then, as you point out, something that really resonates with private citizens is the percent chance over a 30-year mortgage. And that's going to give you built on, as it builds on per year, what the actual chances over that span of it actual flooding are. And this is great benefits in, especially in mitigation. It lets permit officials identify areas of really high hazard, not just ones that get flooded, but ones that catastrophic type flooding could happen. Also prioritization, let you know when you are flooding which areas you should go after first, or which projects should be prioritized and affects these areas. These are very good for visual communication to people who aren't GIS savvy, any kind of decision makers, or people who need to be swayed or at least informed that may just see maps go, okay, mumbo jumbo, this can help you, if used correctly, can really convey risk appropriately. And you also can use it with other risk assessments or your own data you have as interchangeable as your dynamic data changes. Look at it and actually, by using Symbology and transparency, and actually get a good look at what's going on and what set things as freeboard, things of that nature. And intended users, planners, permit, construction inspection officials, anybody involved in mitigation, officials and local leaders can use this data if set up properly by the GIS staff. And then homeowners and home buyers and realtors could also benefit and use this data. All right. Start with the depth grids here, and this is, we'll show you out of the box. Once you get here, which you can kind of see what's going on a little bit. You can see the channelization there. This is, I believe, Highway 431, I believe. Canoe Creek, Little Canoe Creek, St. Clair County. And you can see a little bit of channelization, but not really get that much detail. But then once you use user-defined symbology, you can convey it in different classifications and see varying degrees of depth in which areas would be harder hit. And we'll go over how to properly select symbology to convey what you need being conveyed in different situations to solve practical problems using that symbology. Classification is one I would probably go with the most. That's the way to easily display easily for people who are not jazz savvy information. Otherwise, much like the changeless last firm, you're just kind of clicking on and seeing the depths and not actually having things divide up for you in an easy manner. And we look here at the histogram here, what gives you all the values. So when you're classifying, you might want to decide you want 5 evenly spaced out ones, but a lot of times you're going to have outlier values out here, super deep below, especially middle of the CUSA, other deep areas that are going to sway those classifications. You guys can choose, obviously, whatever colors work best for you. Some people prefer different colors. I like to have a really easy, wide range color ramp and classifications based on the message I'm trying to go. If you just want a yes or no, like a freeboard question, if you're 3 feet above or not, 3 feet, feet of flooding, excuse me, you can just set 2 classifications, 3 foot and greater, and 3 foot and less. So you have 3 in the middle. Everything below 3 is red, or everything below red can be green for safe, and everything above 3 be red for danger, things of that nature. And also, if you're using it with aerial, you can set transparency to where you can still see underneath the raster. Let's bring in a layer into ArcMap. Bring up ArcMap here. Go to Add Data, and it should all be linked in to where before. If you will, hit this button right here to go up 1 level. Everybody see that? Hit that, and let's play with the depth _01 PCT for 1% depth grid. Everybody got that? We all good? All right. Add that. And I'm going to cheat again if you guys just watch along with me here. I'm going to go to one of my pre-selected areas here. And I'm going to go in here to Properties, right click on it, Properties, Symbology, and the stretch is good for certain things, certain elevation if you're using a digital elevation model, but for flood depth I especially like to use classified, so you can set different classifications here. Let's do with 5, let's just do it in a, and you hit classify here to set how you want those broken up. And you can set your break values here. So just click on the break values. And 2. And then for the second one, we'll set 4. I'll do 6. I'll do 8. And that'd be fine. It'll be 8 and higher, so we'll be fine with that. I'll hit OK. Now let's change this to something. I'm going to use this one. Feel free to use whichever one you want to use. Play around with colors, whichever ones you want to use. Make it look pretty. Added this one because just the green, safe, red, danger type scale that I'm used to seeing. And you can see here. One particularly interesting thing to see here from the depth grid is that you'll see this area right here, how it works. We had this area that's actually closer to the stream, is actually expected to flood less than right here further away, which gives away from what especially a homeowner who wouldn't understand connectivity and how you have water flowing this way and back in through here to a low part area. And you also can play around with the symbology. I'm going to go back to classifications again. And I'm just worried about really severe flooding. Let's say I'm just worried about major stuff. Let's say I want to go 2 classifications. And I want to set my break at 4. I'm worried about 4 feet and under, 4 feet higher in case that was freeboard, to see who's at risk, even with that freeboard. Hit OK, hit OK. And here you took something that had all those unique values and now cut it down to a yes or no situation, if that is what you want to use this depth grid as, is a yes or no, with the red being yes, that's more than 4 feet, green, less than 4 feet. Hint, that'll be part of an exercise later. All right. And here we're going to follow the difference here we have for the 10% depth grid. And as we go between these all the way down to a 0.2, just see how it expands with our legend here. There's a 10%. See the slight change there for 4%. You'll see it grow and you'll see areas darken. 2%. There we have the 1% with the big jump there. And then right there, deeper there with the 0.2%. And with that 0.2%, you can see even as wide as this expands, this right here is especially hard to hit with how deep this actually gets in the flooding, the 0.2. And here we have a comparison, just flood hazard areas. You have this area here that's, you look at it, you're like, okay, I'm just as at risk as this guy's at risk, as this guy's at risk, which can kind of give a false sense of true risk, which we'll look at the depth grid, and you see there's varying between, whereas this person might think he's the same risk as this person here, but that's about 6 feet difference of actual risk there between having water seep through your cracks in your door or having to get Fido and Fluffy and get out and get a canoe. As you see, the real deepest aerial channelization there. And this can help with mitigation, knowing that although both these are flooding, there's definitely a difference in severity of the flooding going on. Now we'll talk about the percent annual chance grids. Helps you get true risk on a year-to-year basis. Helps with future planning, knowing which areas are more susceptible, more vulnerable. Helps convey, especially to private citizens or developers, what current and future risks are. And it really is good visualization tools for local stakeholders as a whole. One thing that might be misleading for people, when you show it to them though, you'll need to explain, is it maxes out at 10% risk, and people be like, well, that's not too bad. That's not horrible. But that's the highest it go, because that's as low recurrence interval we go. 10% is just the max we can do. When they say 10, it's 10 and greater. I always say 10 and greater if they're 10%. We'll do a comparison here. We have just the flood hazard areas. Once again, everybody might think they're equal risk. And percent annual chance, where you see much varying degree of who's really at risk and who's less at risk. Let's go ahead and bring that into an MXD as well and take a look at it. We'll turn this one off. Do our add data. And that's going to be the PCT and chance here. Let's go ahead and bring that in. And this, once again, add a box as opposed to your own visualization. It's very strongly recommended to get the most out of it. Is that you, Kelly? No? Very strongly recommended to play with the symbology. I would do classified as well for this. You might, this one more than the depth, you might can get away with more with using a stretch, but I still would recommend using classified. And for this one, let's say, let's just do 3. We want, you're okay, you're in trouble, or you're in big trouble. So let's just try that one with 3. Let's classify our breakpoints. Let's go 2, 6, and 10. And there, the histogram, you can see there's a whole bunch of that maxed out 10% that's going to flood regardless almost any time it happens. And then a whole bunch here, they're going to be okay. Let's go ahead and change this 2 to 1.5 to see if we can get a few more areas. Yeah, there we go. So that way we have a few areas that will be different color. And the histogram is a very useful tool in case you're looking to convey stuff without being affected by outliers. Okay. And let's see what this looks like. And here we go here. And you might be asking why this disappeared here. Percent annual chance, depth grids for redelineations, and this stream right here is a redelineation. We have the depth grid for the 100-year and the 500-year, but we do not have all the other recurrence intervals, the point of the 10%, 4%, and 2%. So we can't make probability grids or the percent annual chance or the percent annual 30-year, but we can still do depth grids. So that's why we don't have the information here we had before with the depth for 100-year. And here we can clearly see, and let's go ahead and let's see if we have any property around here. Let's go to properties, make it a little transparent. Go display. Let's set transparency at 50%. There. Everybody there? Good? Okay. And then from add data, let's add base map. Get the imagery there. I'll add. Give it a few seconds to load. And here you can convey these people here, even though they're, let's go ahead and measure how far away this house is here from the stream, about 750 feet, but yet they're still more at risk than this person 60 feet from the risk as far as actual probability per year. People often feel false insecurity in being further away from the stream. Well, it's less likely to hit me than it is to hit Bobby and Susie up the road who are closer. Percent 30-year chance probability. This is something very relatable to private citizens, as I mentioned earlier. And there's actually some great math in with it that was mentioned earlier that we'll go to here in another slide. 1% doesn't really resonate with the common person having to buy a house and being flood insurance and not flood insurance. You hear a lot of conspiracy theories about why they're in a flood zone and why there's all this push to have everybody in a flood zone. When you guys know that that's the last thing you want is to have to deal with people yelling at you about them being in a flood zone. It's not some giant mind-making scheme, and that's not the whole point here. And also does a lot better conveying information away from the in or out that the regulatory procs have been in the past. And we once again look at just the flood hazard areas, same area, versus percent 30-year chance probability here. And you see varying. This one we're not maxing out. This one maxed all the way up to 90-something%, down to low as 0%. So this has the whole wide array of percentages per 30 years. And before we bring it in and play with it real quick, let's go over this. A question. A structure, it's not in the 100-year floodplain, but for some reason it still has greater than a 10% chance of flooding over the life of a mortgage. How is that? That's because every year exponential over a 30-year span, it's that percentage. For your 99% chance of not being in the flood zone, that 0.99 to the 30th power you still have a 26% chance. There's only a 74% chance, less than 74% chance of not being flooded over those 30 years. So that's if you're the very stretch end of that 1% in your flood zone, you still have a 1 in 4 chance. If you told somebody they're 1% flood zone and they own the house, don't have to pay flood insurance, they might go, well, I'm a lucky guy, I'm a lucky woman. That's not my problem, you know, that's down the road. I'll be, you know, I'm fine. I don't need to be out this extra couple $100 per year if they're being preferred, or worst case if not. But if somebody, you told them they had a greater than 1 in 4 chance of being flooded, they would probably think twice about passing on that flood insurance or building somewhere that is in the 100-year flood. And even if 0.2, even if you're at the very edge in the 0.2 500-year flood zone, the very stretch of what hits it, you still have greater than 1 in 20 chance of flooding over a 30-year mortgage. So that's a very interesting statistic that, once again, a lot of people don't think about the power of mathematics and how that really works out down the long run. Let's go ahead and bring in that probability grid. Turn off the base map for now. Add data. We are going to go to the PCT 30-year C. Everybody got it? Good? All right. Go ahead and add it. I'm going to cheat and go to another area here that I've already scoped out. I'm going to play with the display, set it 50% again for transparency. I'm also going to change the symbology. It's try a different. We've done these. Let's try this one right here. Let's see how this one looks. Oops. Forgot to classify. I'm going to do 4. First, let me get that color wheel again. Let's try this one this time. We can do 4 classifications. And I'm just going to stick with the natural breaks default they have set here. You also can change up here, based on mathematics, if you want equal interval. Define interval, which we're doing, or manual. So let's do equal interval 4. Hit OK. OK. And there you have all these areas here. And how large of an area that is 71, almost 70% and higher, how large of an area that covers the actual flood zone there. So even though it's yearly, may not be as high, over a 30-year span, that's almost a sure bet that this area, these areas right here are going to flood. And this is a good way to convey to private citizens or developers how severe an issue is, or how badly they need to stay out of certain areas. Anybody have questions about this layer?
In the center of that, there's just like a couple pixels that don't look like they belong. Are they just picking up like tops of trees off of LiDAR, or is it bad data?
There are instances where it will get false values as they're trying to clean out, but you also have certain areas that actually will be high points within there, that
like
little dots.
Yeah.
That's possibly bad data due to resampling, or just issues with cleanup on that end. All right, this is a second data set. I gave you guys a good bit of time here to finish. This is a little more involved than the first data set. I gave you guys a little cheat earlier on how to get through it for those of you who were paying attention to that part. Let's try to go through this. We have about 20 minutes to lunch. We'll give you guys that time for questions as well. If you guys need any assistance, let myself or Kelly know. And for this, we'll be using the depth grids we went over, and also the UDF points, S underscore UDF points we went through in the first exercise as well. And also, there's going to be a shapefile. Let me tell you this, it's called sample, just standalone shapefile within that data set. That's the example, that's the shapefile to use for this exercise. So at first we'd bring that in and zoom to that, and then bring in the depth grids and UDF points.